Okay, now we're cooking. Okay, so this is what TheraP looks like. You will, and Jennifer, if you could let people in as we go here, that would be awesome. So this is after you've gotten the referral, you've met with the person, you've accepted the referral, you've done the whole process letting us know that you're going to serve them, you've received the information from the human service zone that you'll need to request. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you will learn soon through the care coordination onboarding process. But this is actually when you get to the point of creating the person's plan of care. And I don't think I can say this often enough. It's very, very critical that you begin the plan of care process as the care coordinator as soon as possible. You have 30 days to get it complete from the day you receive the referral. So the day that our navigator reaches out to you, the day that they get their letter and call you up and say, I want you to be my care coordinator, that's when your clock starts ticking. You have 30 days to get that plan of care complete and your service authorization submitted to pre-authorize your services. If you get it done within that 30 days, you're able to backdate your service auth to start with the day you receive that referral. If you don't get the plan done and your service auth submitted within that 30 days, you don't get to capture all that time you worked on this for billing. Your service auth will start the day you submit it. So that 30-day timeline, really, really critical. That clock is ticking right as soon as you receive the referral. So, and you'll hear me say that a million times, it's just that important that you need to keep on track with those deadlines. So this is the plan of care. We revised this template as of February 2024 when our new state plan amendment um, was approved, and we were able to add the DLA 20 as an option for that functional assessment. So now we allow either the HUDAS assessment or the DLA 20. And those DLA 20s are done only at the human service centers right now. Those are the only ones we can accept. So I had to update the template to allow the care coordinators to indicate where those functional limitation areas were, whether the person had a HUDAS or the DLA 20. If you have a plan of care that was um, previously completed in a prior template, unfortunately, you can't do an update to an old template. And so you will have to start fresh with a new plan of care. That's why we try not to update these templates unless we absolutely have to, because it creates a little bit more work. It is billable time for the care coordinator to go in and recreate that plan, but it's really it's a little bit of extra time. So I'm going to go through how to complete the plan of care with you. This might be the first time you've seen this. You might have done this already a number of times. Hopefully you'll pick up a little bit here and there that you didn't know or had forgotten about. So just from the start here, so the person's name is populated, their date of birth, their Medicaid number. This all comes to you when you tell us you've accepted their referral, and we do a referral to you in TheraP. So that person's profile gets sent to your agency, and you get connected so that you can serve in that care coordination role for them. So the meeting date, that's your last meeting before this plan was completed, get approved, got ready to put up in MMIS with that service authorization. The meeting date really should be an actual meeting where you're finalizing the plan, you're making sure that everybody who's on the person's team, because this should be a team process. Everyone on the team should agree that this is a great plan for this person and these are the right things to have in place for them. So that's what that meeting date is. The start date and end date. The start date is the start date of the person's 1959 current eligibility span. The end date is the end of their current eligibility span. So there's a section here, what people admire about me, and I'm just going to kind of put in some fake information for my fake guy Joe here. Let's see. I am happy and fun to be around. Okay. What is important to me? Don't do things for me. Help me learn. Okay. I'm not going to really give some of this tons and tons of thought, but how to support me best. Include me in all decisions. And remember, I am in charge of my life. All right. So the next section of the plan is really like the meat of the plan. Like we have, some things are like part of that standard template within TheraP. This questionnaire is where we built in everything we needed to comply with CMS, that's federal Medicaid regulations, to comply with our state Medicaid rules, and also to comply with our internal policies and procedures. So this questionnaire is basically the plan itself. So what you're going to do, you can see a little bit of it, but what you have to do is you have to go and open it up. And that's when you'll be able to actually go in and put in the information here. So you'll see that there's several sections of the questionnaire. There's eligibility, stuff related to the home and community-based settings rule, and then there's individual goals and services, and then a risk management or crisis plan, and then a space where it talks about some attachments and review periods for the plan of care. So I'm going to first start with the eligibility and the current 1915I start date. So let's say they're eligible June 1st. Okay, so and we'll just say that their end date would be 5/31/2025. Okay, because it's always going to be at least no more than 364 days. And the previous start date. So you'll see there's some hints here. So this hint says, when is the eligibility redetermination due? So that's when, like the last day, when their eligibility runs out. That's 5/31. You want to have everything ready to go. You want to help them with their redetermination for their eligibility. You want to have the next plan update all ready to go, ready to hit approve prior to that date. You don't want any lapse in service for the person. You don't want any lapse in their plan. So then the next section is the previous 1959 start date. Some people will have this and some people won't. This might be their first time being eligible. This might be, they may have been eligible in the past and had services and stopped. They may have, they may be continuing on with services uninterrupted. So whatever that previous start date was, for this person, we're just going to say it's 6/1. My easy purposes here today. Now, the next section is these dates that are really, really important to quality assurance to our team at the state. We need to have accuracy with these dates. This helps us track, progress as far as how fast people are getting served and really take a look at how the services are being delivered, what kind of quality we're seeing. So the date the individual first made contact with the care coordination agency. And you'll see the hint. You can open up this hint. The date the individual contacted your agency, either independently or with assistance. Maybe they got their letter and they called you up. Maybe they walked in your door. Maybe our navigator, either at the state, Jennifer, or Blue Cross Blue Shield, helped them connect with you. Either way, it's that first date of contact. It's that date you got that email from Jennifer saying this person wants to choose you. It's the date that they called you, whatever that date is. So we're going to say they were eligible as a 6/1. We're going to say they contacted us 6/2. Okay. Oops, 2024. And I've made this as foolproof as possible. So anything with a red asterisk is required, and it won't let you continue on without filling, into the next section without filling those out. Okay, so the date of the first in-person meeting. So that's the day that you actually met with them. So you get the referral. You're going to want to meet with them quickly just to kind of determine, is this agency a good fit? Are we a good fit to do your care coordination? Should we accept this referral? That's the date. So let's say I was able to get him in at my care coordination agency that same day that he referred to me. And then the next one is a requirement. You'll see all these numbers in parentheses and stuff. This is like the section of policy or regulations that this applies to. So these aren't all things that we just think, hey, it'd be great to throw these in the plan. Almost everything is a requirement. Um, so we have a form called the Member Rights and Responsibilities. If you could mute, please, that'd be great. Thank you. So this, we need to know what date that Member Rights and Responsibilities form was signed by them, and then you retain a copy, you give them a copy if they want. It doesn't need to get attached to the plan or anything. You just file it away. You can file it electronically, however you keep your records. But this form needs to be explained to them, signed by them, and offered to them. So that form is on our website and our forms page. So you can find it there easily. So I'm going to say on that same date that I met with Joe, oops, 2024, I gave him that member rights and responsibilities form, and we went over that because I decided at that point that, yeah, this was a good fit. He decided this was a good fit. We're going to go ahead and accept your referral. So the date the plan of care was completed. Now, this should not be the same date that you start working on it. This is a thoughtful process. We really want to build these plans in a very thoughtful and comprehensive way. I don't like to see plans completed all in one day because that means it was a rush job. There was not a lot of any collateral contacts made. There wasn't any effort to build the person's team. There's a lot of things that need to go into this process. That's why you have 30 days from your referral date. So let's see, it's the 6th. So this is going to look like a rush job. So this plan was completed yesterday. Okay. Is this the individual's first 1959 plan of care? Yes, for him it is his first plan of care. If this is the individual's first plan of care, was it completed within that 30 days? Yep, yes, it was completed within 30 days. There's an NA here because if it's not their initial plan of care, you don't have 30 days to do it. You need to get that update done prior to the expiration of the previous plan and be able to hit that approve button ready to go when you're ready to approve that plan for the new date when they become or when their new eligibility span starts. If no, what date was the previous plan completed? I'm going to do NA here because there was no previous plan. The POC team meeting date and time. So this is the time you met, finalized the plan, decided, yep, we're good to go. Sorry, Amazon delivery. And this is the date that you put down as that final team meeting date. So we're going to go with that was yes. Okay. And the location. So Monica's office. This could be anywhere. This could be their home. This could be in a private room at the library. This could be at, your office. Anywhere that the person is comfortable. It's up to the person where they want to meet. And so that's really important to honor those preferences at all times. Was the meeting held at a place and time of the individual's choosing? Absolutely. I consulted with Joe and he chose to do it at my office. Did they lead their meeting to the best of their ability or to the level they desired? Some people don't want to, and that's fine too. But if they show any interest in kind of leading this process, then absolutely you want to support that. Yep, he did. He chose to participate, how he wanted to. And did they choose who attended their meeting? That's really important. You don't want to include people that the person doesn't want there, and you want to honor the people that the person wants on their team. If they have a friend, a family member, somebody that they want included, maybe it's someone from church, maybe it's their sponsor, maybe it's a cousin, maybe it's a previous service provider, a current service provider. You need to honor that and allow those folks to attend the meeting. Now this is the part where we go over whether it's the HUDAS or the DLA assessment that was presented when they submitted their application. That goes along, it's part of the application, one of those two functional assessments. So for this individual, we're going to be crazy and we're going to do the DLA 20, that new assessment. So they don't have an overall HUDAS score. They don't have any of this HUDAS information. We're going to go down to the DLA 20. And the DLA 20 score A qualifying score is 5 or less. So we're going to say that they had a 4. And the date that it was administered has to be within 90 days of when they submitted their application. So if we're looking back, they got approved on the 1st. They probably submitted their application probably somewhere around here. Let's say that May 3rd is when that DLA was administered. And we're going to say that Connie Johnson was that administrator who did that assessment. Okay, and then other Medicaid services. This is a requirement because we need to make sure that we're not duplicating services. So you need to check if the person is on any other Medicaid funded services. And how you do that is by emailing North Dakota 1915I at nd.gov and asking. So you did that, yes, or I did that, yes, I'm going to hit yes. I should say that I created a plan of care creation guide for reference. It's screenshots of this entire process. I do need to update it to include the DLA stuff, but other than that, it's still accurate. And that does give that email address, how to check for that, other Medicaid services, and a lot of other useful information. So I would really advise you to use that as you're going through your first few plans of care. Okay, so the above. Oh, they don't receive any other services. But if they did, you would check which of the services they are currently receiving. That doesn't mean that they can't have 1915I. That means you need to collaborate with whoever's coordinating those other services and ensure that you're not requesting services that duplicate. So for example, the autism waiver includes respite. So you can't then ask for respite for this person through 1959. They can already get it through the autism waiver. Even if they get it and they use it up and they need more, we still can't authorize duplicative services. So it's really important to have that collaboration with those other service providers so that that you know what they're getting and you know what you should be referring out for, and just making sure that you're not requesting those duplicates. But this person isn't on any of those waivers, so we're just going to leave that. And so the date that the care coordinator verified the plan of care does not include duplicative services. Again, it's that day that you email 1915I at nd.gov and you ask. So let's see, I asked on the 4th. Okay, so I'm going to go to save and next. Uh-oh, I have an error. Oh, I've got to hit NA. Okay. All right. So the next section, if you look over on the left here, you'll see is that home and community-based settings rule. So this is really, really an important piece. A person can't be eligible for 1915I if where they live doesn't comply with the federal home and community-based settings rule. So when they've been determined to be eligible, it's been determined that their residence does qualify. That's something that is a requirement of the care coordinator, though, to kind of take care of that ongoing compliance or to verify that ongoing compliance. So you're going to just want to kind of keep track. Okay, so they were eligible when they started and now they haven't moved. Yeah, they're still eligible. When you meet with them, you're going to kind of want to keep track of that so that you can, if there is a change to their setting, you can start, the process of evaluating that setting, making sure it's still compliant, and go from there. So this is just kind of real basic. It's kind of your basic check. So the eligibility worker has said, yes, based on their address, we know that they're, living in a compliant setting. So you have to do this kind of precursory review as well. So the first question, will the individual receive 1915I services within a provider-owned or controlled residential setting? Are they at a treatment center? Are they at a recovery home? Are they at, maybe they're receiving developmental disability services and they live in a group home or, a home that the provider owns? If the answer is yes, you'll need to do do a site visit. And if that happens, we'll just work with our team and we'll work through that with you. If the answer is no, they live in a typical setting. They live in an apartment, they live in a home, they can be homeless, they can be, staying with friends, family, whatever that looks like. There's just those few settings that are sometimes questionable because they may or may not have institutional like qualities, and those are the ones where we need to review a little bit further. Now, the caveat to that is if they live in a setting that is determined to not be HCBS rule compliant, that doesn't mean that they're not eligible for 1915I. That means that they have to get those services outside of those four walls. So generally speaking, 1915I is home and community-based services, right? So like peer support, housing support, all of those things are going to happen outside in the community. So it's not that they aren't eligible necessarily, it's that you just have to be creative and conscious of where those services are delivered. And certainly like if you're delivering services at your office, just a one-time compliance check for your office setting takes care of it, and then anybody that you serve in your office, that they're receiving those services in a compliant setting. The next question is, will they receive services in a residential setting presumed to have the qualities of an institution? For our purposes, no. Joe lives in an apartment that is just a typical apartment that you or I could live in. Okay, and we verified that on the 5th, yesterday. This next section is about home and community-based settings modifications. And these are pretty atypical, but there might be modifications. Say, for example, they live in a provider-owned apartment building with a roommate who requires their fridge to be locked because they have an extreme eating disorder. That would be a settings modification. It's atypical from you or I and what our residential setting would look like, right? So if there's no modifications present, such as those types of modifications, just check NA. But if there are modifications present, you would list out, okay, just at home, the fridge is locked. It's not like at their work environment or anywhere else. You would just answer the questions according to what the answers are. So how are the modifications addressing the specific needs? Maybe the person has the eating disorder and needs to have, limited access or access to only certain foods all the time. You would just go into more detail about those things here, talking about positive interventions that have been used prior to that more restrictive intervention, less intrusive attempts, the environmental condition that exists that correlates to the specific address need, making the modification necessary. Maybe they live in a home where somebody else needs the kitchen locked and it's not for their benefit. So you would indicate that here. Again, pretty atypical, but if you answer yes, if there's any of those modifications to the environment that are different than what you would expect in a typical setting, you will answer these questions. If you need help with this part, if you do answer yes, we can definitely walk you through, how to answer these questions. The last one is really important. Has the modification been made with the informed consent of the individual? That's super important for person-centered services. So I'm going to move forward to the next section. That's where we go into detail about the goals and the services. So the plan of care process, the ultimate thing you want to achieve with the plan of care is you're going to identify where the person has needs, and that really just comes from those functional assessments, either the HUDAS or the DLA-20. And you're going to help the person set some goals based on those needs that they have. And then you're going to connect them with the services that will help them meet those goals. That's really, the long and short of this plan of care process. That's what it is. It's identifying those needs, addressing those needs for the person. So we have two different things here. It's because they would only let me do, I think, 3 at a time. So you need a goal for each service that the person receives. Care coordination is not necessarily a service. It's kind of the beginning point and the monitoring piece, but you do need a goal for care coordination because you're authorizing your services on this plan of care. So I wrote down some goals earlier. Um, we have a lot of training available, a lot of guidance available on writing SMART goals. Our goals need to be SMART, which stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So the goals need to meet all of those things in order to be able to assess, has this person met the goal? What does it look like when this person meets the goal? Like, how do we know they've achieved it? How do we know we need to move on and help them set a new goal? It's just really important to have those goals measurable, but also, some of those other things very specific to the person, not super generic. Definitely timely. You want a time frame listed on there. You want the goal to kind of cover that time frame of their plan. And so there's some guidance on our website. There's some trainings you can watch. I do refer to those as well on the Plan of Care Creation Guide. So please take some time to review those trainings. I don't have time to get into more detail here on those, but I'm going to include here the SMART goal that I came up with for care coordination for this individual. So over the next 10 months, well, his plan year is 12 months. We figured that out. The next 12 months, I would like assistance with connecting with resources and services within my community. Okay, so it meets the S for specific. We're saying exactly what he needs, right? He wants assistance with those resources and services that are available. Measurable. Over the next 12 months, is he making those connections? Is he getting connected with the peer support? Is he learning how to, the schedule for the food banks? Is he learning the bus system? All those things. That's measurable. Those are all measurable things. So yes. Is it attainable? Yeah, definitely. Is it relevant? Absolutely. None of these goals should ever not be relevant to the person. And is it timely? Yes, there's a 12-month period here where we're looking to assess if he has um, achieved this goal. And we want to make sure that it's not too specific, but it's not too broad. It's kind of a fine line, and this might be considered maybe a little bit too broad. Like, this could apply to a lot of people, but what we don't want is a goal that is so specific that anything you do with this person outside of this goal, Medicaid could come back and say, this isn't what we agreed to pay for, because you're justifying the need for your services based on this goal that you're creating. So it's really important to have those SMART goals in place. That is your justification to Medicaid that these services are medically necessary for the person. They need help connecting with resources and services within their community. A care coordinator, that's what they do. So this is a goal. This is, again, their goal for care coordination. In relation to this goal, what outcomes do I desire? What do I have to celebrate already? You don't have to answer every single one of these questions, but have they gotten a head start on any of this? Have they grabbed the bus schedule, and are trying to learn the bus routes? Have they, already made connections with resources for food or for, whatever rental assistance or whatever it is that their goals related to? So that's what you would put here. I didn't write these out and I can't off the top of my head think about this. I'm just going to put X in here. Now this next piece, the need from the HUDAS assessment or the DLA that this goal helps to address. I don't want to see, okay, if the person has the HUDAS, fine, then you just choose whichever ones apply here. If they've presented the DLA as their functional assessment, you choose from the DLA 20 areas. You can see there's a lot more. There's 20. So I don't want to see all these boxes checked. This is, again, a thoughtful process. So is connecting with resources and services in the community. Is that related to communication? Probably not. It's probably more life activities, participation, perhaps self-care. Okay, those are, those I feel like would be the appropriate ones for this specific goal. Okay, and then which service are we requesting to help with this? Well, this first one's always care coordination, so that's the only drop down that's available for that one. Ignore these next two things here. Total units requested. Now, all of the services are, the only limit to the services is 8 hours a day. So if you look and say in his plan year, he's got 11 and a half months. Let's say he's got 330 days left in his plan year, right? Okay, for care coordination, he can have up to 8 hours a day. I'm calculating the units here. So 330 days times 8 days is 2,640 hours. Now 1915I is calculated in units. So I've got 2,640 hours. If I times that by 4, that's 10,560 units. No one is ever going to use that much of the service, and sometimes there's delays in getting the service auths approved and whatnot. A good rule of thumb would be to take 80% of that, and that's what you request. For this one, that would be 8,448 units. I'm going to write in units as well. The frequency requested. Care coordination is not a daily service, not even really a weekly service. I mean, as needed, but it's definitely not, you want those other service providers out there, boots on the ground, working with the person daily or weekly. So this isn't going to prevent you from doing it more frequently, but what it's going to do is we just need to have like that frequency requested. So monthly is fine for care coordination. That doesn't mean you can't meet with them more often than that. But we just need to have that indicated in here. The duration requested, through what date? We always want to see through the end of the eligibility span. So through 5/31/2025. Okay, it always has to be indicated this way, through, the word through, and then that last date of their eligibility. We're really bound to that because the way Blue Cross Blue Shield system works, that's really the only way that we can that they can accept that. So we just, as a standard, we do that for both traditional and our expansion Medicaid folks. So through and then their end date. You don't need to worry about exceeding the maximum service limit unless you literally are requesting time above and beyond that 8 hours a day, which I wouldn't really be something you would ever do. But it is a requirement that we have that process in there. The provider name, Monica's Care Coordination. Okay, that's who's going to be doing care coordination. Now the next one, okay, so the person, it looks like when looking at their needs on the HUDAS, and I know I chose DLA before, but then I chose needs from the HUDAS, that's okay. So the needs from the HUDAS, like I can see that they have pretty high score in getting along, in participation, which would indicate that they really could use a peer support, right? So I am going to use this next section to request peer support for the person. And I wrote a goal for peer support, and that is over the next 12 months, I would like someone to support me while I am exploring the resources in my community and spending time around other community members doing social activities. Oops. Okay. So this meets all of the components of the SMART goal. It's specific, right? He wants support while he's exploring those resources and doing things out in the community around other people, because he has needs in the areas of getting along and participation, maybe even in life activity, um, and maybe even communication for that matter. It just depends on what that HUDA says those needs are, or where that HUDA says those needs are. And you can include here, this is not required. What outcomes do I desire? What do I already have to celebrate? But this is a great space for the care coordinator to indicate to those other service providers what kind of things they could work on with this person while they're providing that peer support. So what outcomes do I desire? And make sure you're using the person's voice here. I want to make new friends. Okay. I don't want to get into fights when I go out. I want to, let's say they want to find a church home. Whatever those things are that that person has, their wants that are related to getting out in the community, doing social things, all of those things. So which service? This is going to be peer support. How many units? Again, we would use that same calculation of 8 hours a day times however many days times 4, and then take like 80% of that. So I'm just going to say it's the same amount as up here, which I don't remember. 8448. So we're going to request 8,448 units of peer support. That doesn't mean that peer support agency has to provide this many hours. It means that they can. It means they're going to take this plan of care, and when they submit their own service authorizations, they're going to authorize up to that amount so that they know that if the person's needs change, if they become more intense, they can meet that person's needs and up to that limit that they are asking for. Okay, the frequency. We're going to say that, the person wants to meet 2 times a week. 2 times a week. Duration, we're again through 5/31/2025. We're not exceeding the max. Peers, Peers Incorporated is going to do his peer support. Okay, and the same thing, we would do, maybe he needs housing support. For the next 12 months, I would like someone to support me so I can do all of the things I want to do, or I need to do, to keep my apartment. All right, it's specific to him, it's relevant for him, it's attainable, it's timely. We've got, over the next 12 months, he wants to do this. So it meets that SMART goal requirement, while again, not getting super duper specific, not just focusing on one thing. It really is kind of encompassing all of those different things that might come up. And so when Medicaid takes a look at this, they can say, oh yes, this is, these case notes support that these things they were doing are supporting his goal of getting the things done he needs to do to stay in his apartment. All these things work together. In relation to the goal, what do they have to celebrate? What kind of outcomes do they desire? Maybe it's they want to develop a cleaning schedule. A cleaning schedule. Okay, that doesn't mean somebody's going to come in and do their cleaning for them. That means that housing support provider is going to support them. Reminders, helping them keep on task, helping them keep track of where they're at with their checklist, helping them, develop those types of things to become more independent in maintaining their living environment. Other goals could be related here too, but only goals related to housing. It's really important for the care coordinator to know what the scope of service is for each of these services and to develop the goals in relation to this, to the appropriate scope. So we've got that. Okay. And then for the Hoodas area that relates to the school, definitely self-care, life activities, probably those two mostly. And so we're going to request housing support. And we're going to request 8448. I think that was that number. Frequency, maybe one time a week. Duration, again, through 5/31/2025. And the provider name is Housing Plus. Could be any, whatever agencies are around that are able to accept the referral. So if those are the only services that person needs, you can go ahead and hit save and next. And we don't need to continue, you know, unless they want additional services. So we're just going to leave that one and do save and next. Next is the risk management and crisis plan. This is pretty minimal. If your agency uses a different format, has some sort of other crisis plan that you use, you can certainly supplement this with that and attach it to the plan, but this does need to be included in the plan of care. So you are going to list all their qualifying diagnoses. That's going to come across when you request. Once you accept the referral, you're going to get prompted to request the person's eligibility application from the zone. And so you're going to have access to all this information, their HUDAS or their DLA, their diagnoses, all of those things. So you can get that off there. You're going to find out who their primary physician is. They have bipolar 2 disorder. Primary physician, Dr. Johnson, and who their med prescriber is. It might be the same. They might have a psychiatrist, somebody who just does their meds. Current medications. So you're going to ask them to tell you what their medications are. I don't know what that would be. Paxil. I don't know if that's a thing for bipolar or not, but put in the medication, the diagnosis, if if they're willing to disclose that information. Emergency contact. This would be somebody who is maybe a friend, a family member who can be contacted in case maybe you can't reach the person, in case there's some sort of emergency when the services are being provided. So I'm just going to put Sue Schmo is his mom, and her number is 701-648-951. Okay. And then we get into the risks. So a person may have a lot of risks. They may only have one or two. Chances are if they receive or are eligible for 1959 type services, they do have some sort of risks. So maybe they have a suicide risk. What are their triggers? Feelings of loneliness, known responses, withdrawals from family and friends, and safety measures in place. Let's see, 988 information posted prominently in all rooms of the safeguards. What, and for suicide risk, I don't know what kind of safeguards might be. Maybe knives are locked in a safe in the home. I don't know. So just kind of, list those risks and those different things associated with those. There's room in here for 3, or there's room in here for 2, I guess. But if you have more you want to list, you can certainly type them up on a piece of paper and then attach them to this as well. So then the date that the backup phone number was provided to the person. Now, this is a number that the person can call if they can't reach like their service provider. So if your agency has a 24/7 on-call and you want to utilize that for 1959, put it down here. I really advise you not to put your home phone number on here, so you don't want to get a call at 3 in the morning. A great backup phone number would be 988 for mental health crisis, 211 for any other sort of emergencies. But you're going to indicate the date that you provided them with those phone number or that phone number or phone numbers. And then I'm going to put 988 and 211 here for those numbers that were provided. Okay. And next is these sections aren't all going to apply all the time. So the plan of care is supposed to be reviewed and updated quarterly. You should be reviewing the progress notes, those case notes from the other providers monthly, and kind of, gathering information on kind of how they're doing on their goals and stuff like that. And then you should be meeting with the person quarterly to go over that, or more often if some changes are necessary. But definitely a minimum of quarterly face-to-face contact is required, and it's recorded in this section. So none of these are required because, the first time you're just developing the plan, you're not going to have this information to plug in here. But this plan is an ongoing document. So when you meet, maybe it's you've done the plan, maybe it's that quarterly review time, you're going to hop in, you're going to create a copy of the plan. You're going to include this information on your quarterly visit. And then you're going to go ahead and save the plan, and then that becomes the plan. And then when the next quarterly visit comes up, you do the same. You record your second one and your third one. And then annually, you're updating this plan as well. So we are including our care coordinator's name, agency, Monica's care coordination, I think is what I called it. And that's my actual work phone number, so I'll just leave that in there. And then the email address for the care coordinator. Now this required attachments shows you if there are any other attachments that need to be submitted with this plan of care and becoming part of the plan of care. So there's 2 different attachments, and they're both found on our website on our forms page. And the first one is the meeting attendee signature. That happens anytime there's that first initial plan or an annual review. So you want to pull together all the people that the person wants on their team and have them sign that meeting attendee signature, review the plan. Doesn't have to actually be a meeting where there's 10 people sitting around a boardroom table, but it should be some back and forth, some approval, some input should be given into the plan for the individual from their team members, and they should all agree that the plan's appropriate. So the first time the plan is completed, get those signatures, and then annually thereafter. Okay, so if this is my first time around for this person, as it is, yes, I got the meeting attendee signatures. I completed it, it's completed, and I'm going to attach it. And then the individual acknowledgement is another one where there's some attestations that are required. Again, that's on our forms website, or on our website in the forms section. That has to be completed and signed by you and the person every time the plan is updated. So yes, I completed that and attached that. Okay, I'm going to save this. Okay, and then I'm going to close it because I already saved this. Everything's good here. This is where I add the attachments. You just go to add file, and then you're going to have, that meeting attendees thing scanned on somewhere in your computer. You can choose it and pop it in here. Same with those attestations, those signature page, that signature page. So you're going to want to upload one or both depending on whichever is required. And then I'm going to close out of that. Cancel adding that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is submit. Oops. Oh no. I thought I put this in here already. Where? And 5/31, 2025. Okay. I'm going to try to submit that again. Oh dear. Save and continue editing. There we go. Okay, now I'm gonna submit it because I don't want to approve it. What else did I leave off here? See, this is how it's foolproof. If you're missing anything that's required, all questions must be answered in the questionnaire. So I missed something in the questionnaire that I developed myself. So let's open it up and see what we missed. Just looking for the red, so I'm just going to buzz through. Okay, so it's not that page. Oh, all these need to be yes, either yes or no. This is the checklist for the HCBS compliance. It's all about choices and kind of rights that they have within their residential setting. So you're going to go through these and thoughtfully complete these questions. If all the answers are yes, you're good to go. If any of the answers are no, it's going to need that further review. Do they have a legal guardian? Nope, we're going to say no for this purpose here. Have we been granted an exemption for the conflict of interest rule? Without getting into too much detail with that, it really determines whether or not you can, at your agency, serve the person with both care coordination and other services. There's 2 exemptions. Typically, the care coordination has to happen at a separate agency than the other services. The 2 exemptions are if there's cultural or language considerations that can only be met by you as a provider, you can request an exemption for that. Or if there's no other willing or qualified providers in the area that the person lives, then you can request an exemption. We have not been granted that, so we'll just do that. We haven't been granted one due to provider shortage. Okay. What did I miss? Oh, I got to put NA here. Some of these, it's kind of silly, but I had to require NA answers in order for them to be required. Oh, and then the last one too. NA. Okay. That should do it. Okay. So now here you have a couple choices with how to kind of finish up this plan, right? So always like save more than once if you want to, if you're like me, because if you don't, you might lose your work and that's not awesome. Okay, so you as the care coordinator, this isn't really a decision that's kind of at your agency level. So the state would prefer if somebody else has eyes on this plan too before it gets approved. Somebody who knows, what SMART goals are supposed to look like, all these things, so that when you submit your service authorization, you attach this plan, it flies right through, you can get those services started. If there's things that don't drive on the plan with your service authorization, or if the goals don't meet our standard, there's back and forth that's going to happen. You're going to be asked to revise it. So it's better to have somebody at your agency who's really kind of becoming the expert at these plans that you can bounce this off of prior to approving it. And maybe there's, 3 of you and just, you just want somebody else's different eyes on it. So you just ask one of your coworkers to review it for you, whatever that looks like. We don't determine what those, how that's arranged. But it's preferable to have someone else look at it. Once that other person's looked at it, go ahead and approve it. It's ready to go. You can display a PDF of the plan. And this is what you provide to the other providers so that they can submit their service authorizations. And this is what you attach to your service authorization. You'll see everything's in here, including the DLA information, and then even the goals. Got the goal for care coordination, the areas that's assisting with, all that good stuff. So this is what a plan of care that's completed thoughtfully and thoroughly looks like. Now, I did this in 50 minutes, but it was all fake information. It's going to take you a while to gather this information, and it should. It should be, again, a very thoughtful process when you're working on the goal development with the person. Really capturing their voice, really capturing what their needs are and what their wants are as well. So yeah, that's the plan of care. I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute so that I can pull up, this call is all about documentation, and the plan of care is documentation. It's documentation that provides that verification to Medicaid that the services are required or necessary for the person, right? But then also another form of our documentation that we need is case notes. We don't 100% require that case notes be used in TheraP. We would love to get all providers there, and at some point we might require that. What it does is that allows the care coordinator to easily review those case notes for their people. They can hop into those other provider accounts and they can review those case notes just for those individuals that they have in common. Those permissions are always in place prior, but yeah, we really would like to see everybody doing case notes in TheraP. And I want to talk just a little bit. We have a really good training on case notes, and actually I think I'll show you that first. Hold on one
Hey,
second.
Monica, we have a few
Yeah.
questions in the
Oh,
chat too.
Yeah, if you want to
You
go
want
ahead
to
and
go through those first?
yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So Rod had asked, is there a specific form that needs to be filled out for the one-time verification of an agency office?
You would use the HCBS initial, like there's a checklist. It's like there's like different levels of verification, and it's just like that first level of verification. I can show you where it's at on the website. Let me pull up our website here. Hold on just a second. I know this question came up for you, Rod, and it was something that was kind of news to me as well. So I'm glad that we can talk about that now. We want to make sure that any of the environments that the person receives services in are compliant with that HCBS settings rule. So this is our main website. Hopefully, can you guys see that? Yeah, okay. So really a lot of the stuff you're going to look at, well, as a care coordinator, you're going to find all the other providers here. So you're going to click into here and there'll be either soon to be a map, but then also a list of the providers. The information for providers is where you're going to find most of this stuff. It's where training, resources, forms, all that is at. So let's see, resources, no, forms. Yeah. So there's one called the initial. I need to organize these better, guys. I promise I'll do that. The initial 1959 HCBS settings review. It's just like the really general broad one. And you can just do that, Rod, and do it for your own office. I've never done one, to be honest. Like that's not my role. So if you have questions on that, you can reach out to Melissa and Lori with questions on how to complete it. But it is a pretty, that initial review is a pretty simple process. So that's where you would find that one. Okay, what other questions do we have? I can't see the chat, so.
Hope asked, how would you document that the client is in a non-compliant setting, but is receiving services outside of the setting? Would that be in those modifications you mentioned or in the case notes?
You would want to put that in the modifications on the plan. Yep, definitely. That's a good question. And it hasn't really come up that often, but we're still kind of getting a better understanding of the HCBS rule and what that means for 1959 services. So yeah, document it in that section on the plan. And then, just, anything that's documented as a modification then would indicate that those services would need to be delivered outside of that setting. So.
We have a couple of questions from Kara. One is, with office work out of our home, but meeting clients in community settings, does HCBS apply for office work to be billable?
It doesn't have anything to do with HCBS to be billable. Anything that you're doing as far as plan development, working on the person's plan, working on behalf of the person, reviewing case notes, we don't care where that happens. It's all billable. But if you're actually meeting with the person, anywhere in the community is always going to be compliant with the HCBS rule. It's when the provider owns the setting that it becomes questionable. So like that's where Rod's question of, having doing that initial assessment of the Better Together office to ensure that they do meet that HCBS settings rule would then ensure that anyone could come to the office and be receiving those services in a compliant setting. Hopefully that makes sense? But yeah, anywhere out in the community, in their home, wherever, as long as it's not in a provider owned setting, is all HCBS compliant. Yep.
And then a secondary question, how should we incorporate goals with a team that does not participate in 1915I?
I mean, I guess I don't quite understand your question. They're having, I mean, they're providing feedback that, like, oh, we think this would be a good goal for this person, or they tried this 5 years ago and it didn't work, or this is the history. Like, that's the collaboration with the team. The I mean, but the care coordinator, go ahead.
So it's kind of a complex case. There's providers that don't participate in 1915I that they're involved with.
Mm-hmm.
But as the care coordinator, the participant kind of wants me to kind of spearhead it. So is that like?
Well, you're collaborating with team members who may or may not be 1915I service providers. More likely than not, they're not going to be.
Correct.
So, but they're having input into the goals and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Yeah. So what is the rub with that? I'm not quite understanding.
No, I'm just kind of struggling with how to kind of coordinate.
Yeah.
Because there is like housing that's also included in that, but they're not a participant in 1915I.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
So it's kind of, there doesn't need to be a housing support goal because they're not a 1915I participant. However, they are receiving housing support. So
Yep. And they may or may not need to be part of the team. I mean, it depends on if the person wants them to have, input into their overall plan,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it would be appropriate probably to, include them if the person wants them, because they could always, they might have a good rapport with the person and may be able to help with that goal development a little bit, or remind them of things that have worked, or other support outside of housing that maybe they've noticed the person might need, or, they might have things to contribute in that way. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Does that kind of help, Kara?
Yeah, kind of. It's kind of a struggle because like this individual also kind of needs like these goals kind of spelled out to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be good to have it all in one plan of care.
Yeah, and you can include, so here's something.
And so kind of listed as to be determined.
Yes, absolutely.
Having like an identified, instead of identifying like the service provider, just putting to be determined. So then all those goals are spelled out for them.
Absolutely. That's a good point. So, and I should have thought of this. So yes, there is room on the plan of care for goals related to services that are not 1915I as well. So if they're working with a provider who's not a 1959 provider, but they're knocking it out of the park with housing, they want to put down some of their goals on there just so the team is aware, so it's on paper, so it's part of the plan. And you can even put, the name of their agency and just not a 1959 provider, in that spot. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea, because really we want this plan to reflect overall the person's support needs, which may or may not all fall within 1915I. So
yeah, and this individual is very complex, and I think that and I think this would be very helpful for anyone coming in as a service provider with 1915I to see all of that together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. Thanks for expanding on that question. I think that's a great idea to just include as much. And that's when I say, make this plan as rich as you can, as thoughtful as you can, as inclusive as you can, because yes, if something happened and they wanted to switch agencies, this plan goes with them, so
Yeah,
it's really a guide to helping them receive continual good services and not have those lapses and reinventing the wheel all the
right,
time. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
You bet. Thank you.
There's just one more question. It's coming up as a number for me. So if somebody wants to jump in and clarify that it's from the 701-781 number, if we have a format, it would be easy for us. I'm not sure what that's referring to. The other question attached to that is how long is the meeting today? It's scheduled for a 2-hour block, but we do not necessarily use the whole time.
That's why we
Maybe
schedule 2
that's not a,
hours.
yeah, maybe that's not a question. I'm not sure. I don't want to discount it though.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we'll go until we are done. I guess that's why we schedule 2 hours. So
um,
that's all I can say about that.
and Ifra asked the peer support how many goals should have, like how many goals
Yeah.
should there be on the care plan?
Yeah, so there should really, for each service, there should really only be one ultimate overall goal. But then, like, I kind of showed breaking that down into like those measurable or those more attainable steps. Like maybe somebody wants help with, accessing resources in their community or support while they do that. But like they have specific goals in mind as far as like maybe they want to learn about the bus system, like I mentioned, that could be, listed in that section below, not as its own goal, but kind of in that what outcomes do I desire section. You can use there's a lot of space in that section to add that kind of narrative. And that really does help break down for those other providers kind of more specifically what that person wants to work on. Yeah. Does that help, Ifra?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you bet. Okay, so and this I'm going to show you two in the forms here. So the two attachments to the plan of care, the meeting attendee signature. That's just pretty simple. I mean, it might just be you and the person. Maybe they don't have a big team. Maybe they do have a big team. Maybe they just have 2 or 3 people. Whatever that team includes goes on here. And then the let's see, the individual acknowledgement one. This is one that's a little wordy, but it's all stuff that's required by CMS and by North Dakota's administrative code and different things like that. So basically, there's an acknowledgement for the individual, and then there's one for the care coordinator. And the individual one says they've been a part of the process, participated to the best of their ability. They agree with what's written in their plan. They were informed of their right to be free of abuse, neglect, exploitation. They understand that their rights or they have someone they trust who can help with them. They agree to the settings modifications if they apply. They understand their plan will be reviewed and they can ask for it to be reviewed anytime they'd like. They consent to this plan being shared as necessary to provide their services, so sharing it with those other service providers. And they're attesting that they were given a choice of services and providers and that they understand that they can request a change to any of those providers at any time. And then the last thing is I know who to talk to if I want to change my services or what is in my person-centered plan of care. So, and then there's appeals information here. So you are going to want to capture their signature. And actually, we can accept typed signatures now because Big Medicaid can. So you can have the person type their signature in here. It's better if it's handwritten, but yeah, it can be typed. And then if they have a parent or legal guardian, you're going to have them sign that here. The parent would be only if it's a minor. And then the care coordinator attestation here says that your agency doesn't have a conflict of interest serving the person. You checked for HCBS settings rule compliance. The services are not duplicative. And then just attesting that you know that all the plans of care uploaded into MMIS or into the the system that Blue Cross Blue Shield uses for our expansion members. And that you've provided the plan to the person, to their parent or guardian, if applicable, to any other service providers, and that you've documented minutes from this meeting and will maintain them in the individual's file. You always want to make sure you document if you have meetings. And you can use the case notes for that. You can use, whatever you want to do. You can take meeting minutes, but then you're going to sign and date that as well. So those are the two attachments. I do want to show you this. So when you get the HUDAS information from the zone, because they're going to send it to you when you request it after you tell us you accepted the referral, you're going to get a couple different looks to the information, but it's all the same information. You might get this score sheet here that lists the different domains and then lists their score here. And this is how you determine, which areas they have those needs in. So like say, they have, so it's for the HUDAS, the higher the score, the more limitation or the more their diagnosis they have kind of impacts their functioning. So, a lot of the times what we see is people have fairly, lowish scores in some of these areas, but maybe a really high score in getting along or in participation or in life activities. As long as they have a 25 overall score, they qualify. They're already qualified when they come to you, so you don't need to worry about what their overall score is. But you're really looking at these domain scores, and that's what's driving that plan of care process. So you might get a form that looks just like this. You might get a printout from the Human Service Center that's a printout of the assessment, and then the domain scores are kind of embedded in the actual assessment itself. So you might, if first time you see one of those, you might have to kind of hunt and peck for those scores, but it'll come one of two ways. I have never seen that yet the DLA that's being submitted, so I can't show you that because I don't think I have a blank one. But I imagine it would be similar to the HUDAS printout from the Human Service Center, where the scores are kind of embedded in that. Unless, Jennifer, have you seen one of those yet?
I don't think so.
Okay. I guess, we have to actually go into the applications in the system and look for this stuff. So we don't really see it as it comes across as approved. But so I just wanted to kind of show you what that score sheet looked like. The other piece of the documentation that I want to talk about today is the case notes. Okay, so I need to unshare for just a second here while I pull up Joe Schmo for case notes. Now we want to see, I shouldn't say we want to see, there needs to be documentation that supports every unit of service that is billed. So if you are documenting, or if you're billing for 3 hours of care coordination, you need to have a case note or some sort of documentation, because we can't require therapy right now for case notes, some sort of documentation that justifies that 3 hours of billing. So you're going to want to be pretty descriptive. You don't have to, take notes of everything that was said and everything that was done, but you want that case note or that documentation to reflect all of the time that you are billing. If it doesn't, Medicaid will likely still pay for the services, but they will likely also come back and say, show us the documentation. And they could say, this documentation does not support the billing. You owe us X amount of dollars. And it has happened. And we don't want that to happen. So please make sure that your documentation supports the time that your agency is billing for the services you're providing. So I'm going to pull up a case note for, hold on just a second. I'm quite sure I can write a case note on Joe. I just have to figure out where. There it is. New case note. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm sorry. There's no way that I would could have had this pulled up before because they're up times out pretty quickly. Okay, go back to sharing here. Okay, can you all see that case note, new case note? I will assume yes. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So we have a template specifically designed in TheraP to capture all of the information that is required for billing. So you can develop your own case note template in TheraP all day long if you want to, that you have that capability. We can't shut that off, but I would really recommend you use our template because it does have all the information for billing. What you can do is you can run a report if everybody does their case notes like they're supposed to for all the service they provide. You can run a report to provide to your biller that has all the information they need to do the billing. So just keep that in mind, that they're very useful, not only for justifying the services that you're billing for, but also for that purpose of you know, producing that information you need to do the billing. So there's only one template in there for us, and it's for Joe Schmo. We don't have any case notes yet for him, but if we did, and I'll show you when we approve it, then it'll show up down here. Okay, so service date, today. Okay. Service provider, that's me. Activity type. Care coordination. Maybe that's not something we require. Sorry, I've never done this. Leave that blank. Face-to-face, yes or no, depending. Ours was face-to-face. Person contacted. So this is like if you were doing collateral contact. Say you were reaching out to their case manager at the Human Service Center to talk through, you know, some challenges, some ideas about, you know, maybe working on some different goals, whatever. You can just type in Becky Miller, okay? And oops, this worked. Okay. And then Becky's name will show up in there, okay? And then the questionnaire is where we're going to capture all that billing information. Service begin date, that is today. 6, 2024. Save and next. Service begin time. Let's say we met at 10 a.m. Service end date was also today. You should only have, the case note should only span one day, so please write a fresh case note for each day. Okay, and let's see, we got done at 11:45 a.m. Okay, place of service. We were at my office. Procedure code, care coordination. Modifier. There is not a modifier for care coordination. There are a few modifiers. It's going to tell you which ones you have to use the modifiers for. Care coordination is not one. What? Oh dear, what's happening? Okay. So that captures that billing information, the time in, time out, the date, the place of service code, the procedure code. And then of course it captures the renderer of the services because you're logged into TheraP under your login. So it knows that that case note was done by you. So I met with Joe to review his progress toward his goals for peer support service and housing support. He is making great progress Goals are still appropriate as is for the time being. That means he hasn't met his goals. He hasn't like blown everything out of the water. Goals don't need to be updated quite yet. So that, that tells what we did, justifies, we were together for an hour and 45 minutes. So we looked at, the different case notes together, kind of reviewed, what he's done in relation to where he wants to be. So that case note justifies that time. Okay, you attest that you have reviewed the content and verified the information provided is true and accurate. That is not just an annoying pop-up. That is really, really important. You are creating a medical record with this case note. It needs to be accurate and true. You're signing your name on it. And you're telling federal Medicaid that you provided this service for this person, and this was the time, and this is what we did. So please don't take that lightly. These case notes need to be accurate representations of what the service was that occurred. Okay, so I'm going to do back to form. Okay, so now, oops, no, that's not what I want. Hold on, I'm going to stop sharing for a sec. I want to show you that you can view the previous case notes. Okay, so if I pull up Joe to do another case note, you can see the previous case note that was written, and they go way back. There's only one here, but you'll see, historically, you can pop in and view any of the case notes that are in that list. So any questions on the case notes? Again, we want every single service that's provided for 1959, whether that be care coordination, peer support, non-medical transportation, anything you're billing Medicaid for needs to have this documentation so that you can produce this in the event of an audit and you can justify the services that you billed for or that your agency billed for. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Looks like, is there any questions in the chat here?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I see the option that you choose is the office. So if it's in the community, there is an option in the therapy or?
Yes. Let me go back. Hold on. Let me pull that back up again. So if I wanted to do back, don't pay attention to this. Sorry. Okay. If I want to do a new one for, let's say I forgot to do mine for the 4th, right? So normally you want to do it the same day, but things happen. Okay. So that was me. Activity type, we're not going to do anything for that. Face-to-face, yes. Person contacted, there wasn't a person contacted. This is just me and Joe. Okay, I'm going to open that questionnaire, service time, and I'm just going to put in here for this. Okay. Place of service code. Yep, so other would be in the community. Unless it's at school, at their place of employment, at a shelter. Yeah, so, or at their home. Yep, so you would just choose other if it's maybe you met at the park or the library or wherever that may be. Yep.
Thank you. I have another question.
Sure.
For example, when you're writing the notes, so I see that you wrote I and Joe. So are you referring to their name and using I, or are we using like a community connect, like a, for example, like participant and peer support? And...
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. whatever your comfort level is. Yeah. If you're used to writing it that way, that's totally fine. I know some people will always say, participant and this writer or whatever, or this care coordinator. But yeah, we really are more focused on, is the case note there? Does it justify the time billed? So
okay. Yeah. So you can use the I mean, the client's name.
Yeah,
Is that what you-
absolutely. Because this is a secure system. It's HIPAA compliant. There's, yeah, there's no concerns with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Okay, did I see there's some other, oops, I'm gonna stop sharing. I think there was maybe some other in the chat. Oh, no, that was it. Any other questions?
I just want to come back, sorry. And I
That's fine.
I listened to your recorded therapy note
Mhm.
on a previous one, like last year that you did. I just want to double check that question before I just assume. When you were doing the case note, you said if this goal related to housing, peer support cannot do it, or something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you're a peer support, you shouldn't be providing anything related to housing or documenting any services provided related to housing.
So, for
Because,
example, if
yeah.
you take a participant or a client to like negotiate with a landlord or,
Mhm.
or something related to Section 8 or something like that.
Yep.
So peer support should not be
Nope.
facilitating, is that what you're saying?
That's housing support. That's why it's important to know what the scope of service is for the service you're providing and make sure that you don't provide service outside your scope. Peer support shouldn't be helping with employment. They shouldn't be helping with housing. They shouldn't be helping with education. That's why we have the different types of providers. And there's a very specific scope for each of the providers. They're outlined in the policies that we have for the services. And you need to become very familiar with those so you understand the risk in that is that you may document that you helped somebody find an apartment, met with the Section 8 people, gave them a ride here, did this, helped them with this paperwork. Medicaid could come back and say, that's not peer support. We paid you to do peer support for this person. Now you owe us this amount of money because we paid that claim out and that wasn't what it was for. So you need to be really careful about the scope of service you're providing.
Thank you, Monica.
Yep, you bet. Again, I'm not trying to be like threatening or whatever. Like, I really want to help providers not have to pay money back to Medicaid. Nobody wants that. If we can avoid that at all costs, we will. So, I might sound like a broken record. It might sound like, I'm trying to get really tough. It's just because we don't want that situation for any of the providers to have to deal with. So just make sure you're following the scope of service, that you're billing, that you've got documentation that supports your billing. It's critical that you have that in place. And the best way to do that is within TheraP. That allows that care coordinator access to those case notes so you don't have to like put everything together and send it upon their request. They can just hop in and look at those notes. It's just really beneficial to have everything in that one system. Any other questions? Looks like there's another one in the chat, maybe. Oh, it depends on what kind of housing questions you have, I guess. Cheyenne, go ahead. I can try to answer, but I'm not going to get too deep into housing policy stuff.
Hey, Monica. So my
Hi.
question is this we receive like a currently updated housing review or everything, like a policy.
Mm-hmm.
There I see about Andy Rent and Andy Rent assistant and housing support assistant. So I am so confused because some of my clients receive a housing assist like Andy Rent help.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I read this one, it seems like I am not eligible to provide the services like housing related, like Andy Rent related questions for them.
Mm-hmm. So it all comes down to what they're eligible to receive through any of the other programs that they're taking part in. So if somebody is only getting financial assistance and not like hands-on support like what you would provide, you can still do housing support, but you need to coordinate and you need to know for sure what services or what support they're getting through any of those other programs. So it's my understanding that ND Rent Help, if somebody's, and this came right from the administrator of that program, that if somebody is eligible for 1959 receiving services, they will stop the hands-on service through North Dakota Rent Help so that 1959 housing supports can take over.
So
They just can't
they
have
do
it from
provide the
both.
management like a how like a same like us.
Some, a little
Hmm.
bit, not as much probably, but there is, on paper, there is that amount, you know, there is some housing support associated with some of those other programs. That's why you need to coordinate and you need to know what they're getting from those other programs. And if they're getting anything that is hands-on support, then 1959 has to wait until they're done with that program.
So who gonna find that out, like me or the care coordinator, before I
You.
get a referral?
Yeah, I mean, if you get a referral, I would do my homework first. I would contact, or I would find out for sure what they're getting. Talk to their housing facilitator or their whatever person and find out for sure what they're getting and what they'll still be getting once 1959 is in place. Because, like I said, that program administrator told us that if somebody becomes eligible for 1959, they will no longer provide the hands-on support, which
Okay,
would
so
allow
that
1959. Yeah.
yeah, so that means like before even I accept the referral, then I need to do some research on that client
Yeah, a
or
little
how
bit. Yeah, you're going to want to do a check on that just to see. Yeah. Yep.
can a care coordinator can do that their side before they send us a referral.
I mean, you can ask the care coordinator to do that. Yeah. I'm not going to say it's always going to happen. But you can sure ask them if they haven't. If they have done that and they're not eligible, then they shouldn't be making the referral, right? So
Yeah.
either A, they haven't done the check, or B, they did the check and it's okay and it's not duplicative. So either way, like you're probably going to want to make sure before you accept the referral and risk, you know, providing services that we're duplicating anything else.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I know, and you know that it can really get muddy with those programs. If you have other questions about that policy, I
Mm-hmm.
really am not the person to answer policy questions. That's Melissa Clocky Joyce.
Okay, Melissa. Okay.
Yeah, so if you have any other questions like that, if you want to shoot those to her, that would be great. I try to kind of stay out of those discussions as much as I can because I'm not involved in writing the policy or interpreting it. So it
Okay,
kind
I
of,
can do
yeah.
that. Thank
Okay,
you, Monica.
you bet. Yep. And it looks like Sherilyn is it Sherilyn?
Yep, it is.
Okay.
So, Monica, I just wanted to follow up a little bit on that housing question because, you know, as of July, like all of the hands-on contracts end, so then it'll switch to
Right,
I mean, really nobody will be getting hands-on facilitation. So is this
exactly.
something that won't really be an issue after that July date?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of a moot point, but there is a little bit of time frame in between
Yeah.
there where those referrals are still going to happen. And so what we would like to see if somebody, you know, ideally what would be the best is just to put the housing support on the plan of care, but then just like have the start date be, you know, July 1 or whatever that is when that program's no longer going to be in place or that support's no longer going to be there. And that would be probably the cleanest way to address that.
Yeah.
Yeah, either way, the person's going to have to wait, unfortunately, for the 1959 support. So hopefully they're getting, you know, some level of that hands-on support.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Any other questions? Hopefully not about housing support because I want to refer those to Melissa. Anything else about the case notes, about the plan of care? I will be putting this recording on our website. And actually, let me show you real quick. If you're not very familiar with our 1959 website, let me just show you where those trainings are at. So And maybe, Jennifer, would you drop the training page website in the chat for me? So this is our training page, and this you'll see is the schedule for these calls. And they're the first Thursday. We're not having one July 4th, so we'll resume in August. And so there's a lot of stuff on here. You open up the page and it doesn't look like much, but when you open up these little accordion files, there's some trainings on the HCBS rule, about the HUDAS, the tools for doing the HUDAS administration and stuff like that. There's some pretty cool recordings here from, we had a vendor do some training for us. They did Medicaid Academy. They did a Medicaid 101, which is just kind of basic stuff. And then there was some different topics. So I would really recommend oh, it's not there. Oh, we did it in a T8 call. So I would really recommend, not that. Well, that for people that it applies for, if you're doing billing, the technical assistance calls. If you open up that one, this has, not all our calls are recorded, but some are. The SMART goals ones, this definitely watch this recording from August 3rd. Watch this recording about the plan of care, referring to other service providers. I kind of go through that whole process of how those referrals work. There's a TheraP case notes demo here. And then there is a documentation best practices. There's not a recording of that, but there's really good resources there in this PDF as far as, you know, just like best practices for documentation, what case notes should look like, what they should include, you know, just in general, not necessarily, you know, 1959 standards, but just best practices. So please feel free to utilize these resources. Honestly, I probably wouldn't go back any further than maybe a year, because some of this information might be a little bit obsolete. But like the understanding mental diagnoses, treatment and recovery, that's not going to be obsolete. So you can pick and choose, but you know, we run the risk of some of the info being old the further back you go. But yeah, for sure, you know, if you're a care coordinator, watch this plan of care one, watch the SMART goals one, and then just make sure that you know what makes a good case note. And, you know, you don't have to provide every bit of every detail of everything you talked about, but you want to make sure that they definitely support all that time that you spent with the person. Okay, it looks like there might be another question. Okay, so Annalie asked a good question here. The care coordinator creates goals for each service provided. So for example, does the peer support agency have input in the goals, and can they be changed or modified easily? Yeah, absolutely, they can be changed or modified. The care coordinator works with the person prior to making any referral to the agencies. They develop those goals and then they make the referrals so that they can share with the agencies what the person's goals are. But that's a great opportunity for those peer support agencies, once they start working with the person, to really work on some of that, breaking down those goals into those achievable steps, into those objectives to work on. And we definitely want to see that reflected in the plan of care. So anytime any of the service providers have input into the plan, absolutely. The plan can easily be updated to include any new information or any new goals or changes. And then Ryan asked on the last two IMs, it was hard to distinguish what changed in the policies. I hear you, Ryan. Please provide feedback on that to Melissa. And but that, yeah, we've definitely heard that. And I agree, because if you don't know the policy back and forth, it's really hard to know what changed. Yeah, definitely, Mason. Yeah, you support that as well. Reach out to Melissa, give her that feedback. We're really trying to do a better job of making those policies more easily understood and more like provider friendly, because 1959 is very unique in that our providers aren't the big, well, they can be, but they're typically not the big medical providers. They've never billed Medicaid prior to this. They aren't used to like Medicaid policies and how those look. So we're trying to meet the providers where they are and provide those in like lay language as much as possible and make them easier to understand. But any feedback you can provide to Melissa, she's welcoming that. So. All right. Any other questions? Thank you guys for being so engaged in this, asking great questions. And if you want to refer anyone to this recording, I will get it up on the website, hopefully by the end of the week, under those TA calls. And then if you have any questions, just reach out. But please, I'd encourage all agencies to be doing those case notes in TheraP for every provider, no matter what service is being provided. Just document all that contact, document those services so that there's never any question of, you got paid for this service. Where's the proof that you did it? So, all right. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you guys so much for hopping on today. Won't see you July 4th, but hopefully the call in August, you'll be back on. I haven't decided what the topic is yet. If anybody has any requests or ideas, please shoot them to me and I will see what I can do. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.